Okay, we're here again at the Allen Chadwick Garden on this steep south-facing slope, and let's look at our fundamental unit in this very intensive garden, and that would be the raised bed. Our beds feature a wide, about 50-inch bed, flat-topped, straight-sided, raised anywhere from 3, 4, 5 inches, and the style of preparing the soil is one that is of deep digging. We penetrate down 12, 15 inches with a spade, and before we do that we spread compost on the surface, and then that compost is integrated vertically into the soil to the depth that we dig. This deep digging and the pre-placement of compost is important for our cropping schematic. We grow intensively. In this bed I have 6 rows of lettuce. The interior 4 are of a big, fat, silky, buttery butterhead. The exterior rows feature the oh-so-cute but dense and heavy for its size little gem lettuce. So there are probably 350 or 400 plants in this 50-inch by 25, 30-foot bed. So this is what I mean when I say we plant and we grow intensively. But in order to do that, we have to dig a little deeper, perhaps put a little more compost on, and ensure that it's integrated vertically. Now, this idea of the vertical integration of compost or any other fertilizer you choose to use, which could be an organic fertilizer itself or a green manure cover crop, this deep digging along with that vertical integration of fertilizer allows the plant roots to penetrate with ease at depth to their maximum rooting depth. If there were a compaction layer, or the typical scene in a field situation, plants go down about 4 or 6 inches, encounter some resistance and move out laterally. And that can work. If this were a field situation, we would probably only have 2, maybe 3 rows of lettuce, not the number of rows we have here. So the underlying thing is a deep digging and creating a habitat that the roots can probe easily downward. That allows you to have intensive spacing in a row and a high number of rows per bed. It's kind of the basic unit of this garden or of any intensive garden. If we want to pivot now and look to my right, we have 2 beds here that are an example of one of the examples of our intercropping scheme here. Here we have 2 beds. The one closest to me has 1-year-old apple trees at about a 5 or 6 foot spacing. And in between each apple tree we have a bush rose. These are not just any roses, these are David Austin roses, which are they have the characteristics of the lushness and the fullness and the scent of old-fashioned roses, but they have, from modern roses, repeat blooming characteristics. They are otherworldly almost, like that. So we have trees, roses, and then on the outside of the bed here we have a double row, and on the other side a single row of flowers. In this case it's a biennial flower called digitalis or foxglove. And so in this 50-60 inch bed we have quite a complex of plants. And this is our aim. We do this also with annuals, but in this case there are perennials and biennials involved. And the aim is to grow together in one bed 2 or 3 different types of plants, species of plants, so that the growth of one doesn't interfere with the other. Again, the deep digging I refer to is integral here, but it's just how do you space things out. So these trees grew pretty handsomely for the first year. The roses are just getting going. These biennial foxgloves will grow through the winter, become quite dense, bloom, send up a nice 4-foot stalk in the late winter, early spring, be used as a cut flower, but they're also an excellent plant to attract pollinators and beneficial insects. They'll be done by next May, June, and we would come in with another side plant, maybe a row of bush beans or maybe a triple row of little gem lettuces. So that's the kind of interplay within a bed and relay cropping over time. This is a bed of direct sown mixed salad greens. The aim is to generate at high density a lot of quick greens, and the timing is such with most of these are members of the brassica family, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, etc. And most of them are Asian greens. There's also arugula, a Euro thing. And pretty much like clockwork, from direct sowing to your first cut is about 21 days, and you can get a number of cuts, maybe 3, 4, 5 cuts out of it. So it's highly productive, but also highly demanding in how you seed and how you cut and all that jazz. And let me say this about the first cut. The first cut is the kindest, the sweetest, the most succulent. This is why I grow salad mix cutting like that. The subsequent ones are okay, but they're a little tougher, a little more stemmy, and then you'll get to a point where, boy, is this a pain in the neck and no fun? Time to move on, so you have successive sowings. Probably you could get maybe 3 to 5 cuttings out of a bed. So you go day 1 to day 21. Day 21 you're cutting. You can probably come back every 5, 6, 7 days and recut. Again, maybe 2, 3 times or more, and you want to have successive sowings maybe every 3 weeks down the line to keep you in a steady supply of that first cut, the kindest one. So let me explain what we've got here. Going down the outside of the bed, we used a push seeder to seed radishes. And we got a pretty good germination. You always oversow, and if you're seeding, slightly undercover. But you want to be careful about too dense is standing in general, because you're going to have to thin. We're about to bend down and do some thinning. And if it's ridiculously thick, it is a psychological barrier. You don't want to do it. And it actually is injurious, that you're injuring the plants that you're trying to leave behind. So it's dense, but not too dense. But on the other hand, in the crossrows we have here, these are beet greens, and we have radishes and a whole bunch of Asian greens. Au contraire, we want a thick sowing to generate as much biomass in a small space as we have. So we'll often put it down 30 to 40 seeds to the foot and maybe more. I'm hesitant to say more because people really tend to overdo it. But this would be a good example of a nice thick sowing of beet greens. And this is not just any beet green. This is the beet green to grow. It's called bull's blood beet. And it is a really good, succulent, red, really nice fire engine, shiny green. Grows, abundantly, and it's good for that. About 60 days down the road, it makes a beet. Lousy beet. It's slow. It doesn't taste that good, but it's good for beet greens here. There are better beets for beets. So that's what we did here. So we also did cross row. This is called cross row seeding. I just make a little indentation. I stand on this side, my partner stands on that side, and we're bending down and we're applying seed right off the thumb and forefinger here at the specified density. With these cutting greens, pretty darn dense, 30, 40 seeds to the foot. Here we have a section of radish. And we want when you're thinking about root crops and density, they want to stand shoulder to shoulder. So what's the width of the shoulders? Radishes, maybe an inch or so. Carrots, a little more. Beets, 3 inches, like that. So at final spacing, that's the spacing you want between plants. But you would seed at maybe 3, maybe 4 times that density, just to ensure, in case, the birds or the weather or this or that, make sure you have a thick enough stand like that. And I have to say, for first timers, this is a pretty good thinning here, but yet it's a little too thick. So I'm going to recommend that we come in and thin. We also need to thin down the line here like this. So let me see if I can demonstrate for you. One, you need pattern recognition is an important thing in our craft science, farming and gardening. Well, which ones are the beets? Which ones are the radishes? You need, it's on a need to know basis. So this is the foliage here. There are a few extraneous weeds here. I'm just gonna pull back a little here, and you can see it's a pretty thick stand. I'm just gonna start to thin a little bit. I want them to stand a couple inches apart, and this is not a total precision thing, and that's okay. So How can you do this in a way that is somewhat quick, somewhat accurate, I stress somewhat there, to the, couple inches between single plants here. And so can you go quick, relatively speaking? And can you do it in a manner that is not injurious to that which is left behind? Let me just do a little, let me shut up and do a little section here. So I've got one radish there, one radish here, one radish there, here a radish like that going down the line. Sounds like old McDonald's farm. Again, develop the ability to move somewhat quickly and still be somewhat precise. And that's kind of the thing in farming and gardening, kind of the ratio between precision and time. And some things are more general and some things need to be incredibly specific. This is probably mid-range. If you wanted to, you could gather these up in a bowl, wash them off, and throw them in your salad. They're even making, oh, so cute little radishes already. Another 10 or 15 days, we'll have a honkin' 2-inch radish here, and it'll be good, like that. And when you actually get to it, a quick flick will get you there. If you're kind of like that, it's gonna mess up on you. And again, it can be a little closer, and it's probably better to have it be a little denser standing than you actually want. It's just the emphasis in this garden is how can we maximize production per square foot, or actually square inch even. And we can always come back and do further thinnings or take some as salad greens or something like that. But let me just do a little more here so you have perhaps, and like I said, this is actually, we pushed the cedar up and down 3 or 4 times, so it's actually like a somewhat wide band or double row here, and that's okay. But you want 1.5 inches or so between the plants that remain. So if I look here, and I was grading me out, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give me a B. That's a joke, folks. It might look about like this. A little thicker is better than a little thinner. Anytime you do this, don't freak out. The plants that you jostle, well, wilt a little. If it's a warm day, I would actually give them a little squirt of water overhead to kind of resurrect them, as it were. We'll be good here with this cool weather, and we're expecting clouds and rain tonight and tomorrow like that.